Okay, welcome to the Saturday edition to Wake Up America. Today we're going to again be talking to Dave Maryland, a good friend of mine, and who has helped me and many other people. And I want to lead up to the time that I met Dave, which I met Dave either at the end of 2005 or in the beginning of 2006. Before that, before we the people, because they started around, I don't know, 99 or 2000. I'm not sure exactly when they started, but I started in 1988 when I was first introduced to the criminal activity of the IRS and the government. Somebody gave me a recording. I started, in 1988, I was introduced to the realities of the IRS, the Federal Reserve, and, by a great guy, a great speaker, Howard Friedman, who has now passed away. But his illustration and presentation was so awesome, I didn't doubt one thing, about the credibility. He came on so strong and right on point that I had to pull over. Back then we didn't have computers and audio and everything. All we had was we were passing out cassette tapes. And I had pulled over to the side and sat there for a couple hours listening to the tape. And actually tears were coming out of my eyes because it came a realization to me how we've been deceived by our own ignorance. So with that being said, I started searching out people. I joined groups like the Pilot Connection, North American Freedom Council, Save the Patriots, American Litigators, which back at that time it wasn't ARL, it was Eddie Kane and group or something. But I joined all these groups to get all the information that I could, and I went to meetings around the state as well as some meetings around the country. And the reason I bring all this up because all this information that you see in the email about, admit or deny in the from We the People, or you go to the website, a lot of it is really right on point as far as, the IRS and the government and so forth. And so, I started grabbing a hold of this. And then around 1993, because I was a member of Save the Patriots, I decided at that time, after Larry Beecraft won a court case in Tennessee, Lloyd Long, he got the tax evasion acquitted, and the man was free. And I said, wow, this is great. Larry Beecraft, was a flag waver and everything. And so I decided that I'm no longer going to file tax returns. Then going towards 1994, I started getting letters from the IRS, and I would have Save the Patriots respond because they were my fiduciary duty, or they had the fiduciary duty or the power of attorney, however you want to say it. And John Kottmeyer and group would answer, and I would take that response and go to the law library and look up every section in code, and they were right on point. And so the IRS and them went back and forth, and it was really no bothersome to me. But then I was, I don't want to say smart enough, but I was encouraged to get my company, because I had a swimming pool construction company. It was quite successful. And so I had to get that into asset protection, or I had to put myself in asset protection because I owned a company. And from prior experiences of other people, if you owned a company, they just went into your bank account of the company that you were president of and took all the money that they claimed you owed them. So I had to separate myself, and I did. And so in 1995, they came and they did and they wanted to do an audit on Chapman Pools. And I said, fine. And when they found that the corporation, was basically a blank shell, because I kept it open as a blank shell because of the competition. I didn't want them to say, well, Chapman Pools went out of business, blah, blah, blah. But they realized it was set up in a trust, and I was operating under a UBO, which is unincorporated business organization, which is a little bit different than the way I run now. And so they came back out and they said, Mr. Chapman, we find out you're playing tricks on us or what? And I said, no, I gave up all my ownership to the assets and everything several months ago. And they said, well, may we talk to the trustee? And I said, of course. So I called the trustee, got him on the phone. He allowed them to do the audit. And at the end of the week, they came out and said, well, Mr. Chapman, we find that everything is in order. However, we see that you haven't filed the 1040. Now, I ask you, what does a 1040, a personal 1040, got to do with the company? Nothing, right? They can't tell out of the audit of the company that I didn't file a return. I mean, that doesn't even make sense, because we know why they were there. They were there to steal that money if they could. And so I said, other than that, do you have any other questions? And they said, no. I said, thank you very much. I never bothered responding to their question. So through 1995 through 2001, I guess you would say, I went and challenged the IRS many times with books and records summons and all kinds of stuff, and they never got past the first question that I've always learned to ask: where's your delegation of authority? And for those of you who may not understand what that means in the way that I understand it, and I could be wrong, but the delegation of authority is either from Congress. Did Congress give you the authority to talk to me? And keep in mind, I did not know what you're going to learn, what Dave had taught me, about this. But be as it is, I knew they had to have some kind of delegation of authority, and they could have. I don't care. I don't know what they could have given me that would have sufficed, but they would never respond to the question. We have all the authority. Well, where does it derive from? Well, we're the IRS. Well, great. I'm Chris Chapman. Where's your authority to speak to me? Where is your delegation of authority? And they would never get through that. And we never had a meaningful meeting, because they never answered the question. So then, as time goes on, now I'm getting a special agent, not a guy who comes up in a short bus, but a guy that, he knocks on the door and says, hi, I'm with the Internal Revenue Investigation, and we're, the criminal investigation, and we're here to see if we can put you in jail. And he didn't really knock on the door like that, but my response was, great. Do you have your delegation of authority? And he didn't respond, and I had this, and every time I talked to the IRS, I always had a recording with me. I always recorded it because I wanted to use that as evidence, because when I had the recording, I would take the recording to a court reporter, get them to transcribe it, and then I would send it to the agent in question and ask him to refute any of the conversation in there, or it will be retained as evidence, okay? Because that's the rule of evidence. We had a meeting. We had a meaningful meeting. If you didn't answer and my question and I sent you on your way, to me that is a meaningful meeting. It wasn't for him, but it was for me. So then every time that would happen, then he would get frustrated, and then he started, going after my paychecks and everything. And I'm not going to get into long-winded about that, but I prevented all that from happening, and they couldn't do that. Mainly one, for asset protection, two, because I educated the people that I worked for properly, because I sold my company. And I was a salesperson as well as a consultant for swimming pool companies and screen companies and solar companies. So they needed me. I was fortunate enough or blessed enough that they needed me more than I needed them, because getting a job wasn't a problem, okay, because I'm good at what I do. With that being said, they listened to me and I educated them, and when they got a letter from the IRS wanting to levy my account, I would write, I would send them back a letter, or they would send back a letter saying, "Hey, we're glad to give you this man's money. We don't want any problems with the IRS, okay? However, he's threatening to sue us if we give you his money, and I need a whole harmless letter from you, and you give me that, I'll give you all of his money." But the IRS would never respond. So then, around 2005, I get a call from a friend of mine, a guy named Jim, and he says, "Hey, Jim," he says, "Hey, Chris, this guy is writing a criminal complaint, and I feel you need to join it because this guy is so much like you, or you're much like him." He said, you really would be great together." And at that moment, it was just, I don't know if it was timing or I didn't have the money or whatever it was. I can't give you an excuse. I just don't remember why I didn't do it at that time. But then in 2006, I did take a chance to meet Dave on the phone. And when I met him on the phone, I instantly fell in love with his posture. I mean, it connected so much with me, and all this stuff that, and I was realizing then, just after a few minutes with him, I guess we talked for about 45 minutes to an hour. I got so much from him in that one conversation that I could almost literally throw all this stuff away. And when I say all this stuff, I'm talking about the checks on a closed account that so many people have gone to jail for, zero returns where so many people have gone to jail for. Not that I did them, okay, but I had the information, and the administrative process and filing a lien on the judge, which I never did, but I was learning the process. All that time stealing information that was happening, it was no more needed. It wasn't even to consider anymore, because I didn't have to worry about the treasury account. I didn't have to, the all caps name. And a lot of this, when I say, I don't need to do this, or I don't need to hear it, I'm not putting you guys down if you believe in it, because the all caps name is very real. It's on point, but it's only on point when the element of conversation is on point for that discussion. You don't bring it up if they don't bring it up. If the one is coming after you for the debt, he may have your name in all caps, but who cares? It could be upside down for all I care. Because what Dave is going to teach you in Section 83 book, the code breaker, the Section 83 equation, what Dave teaches you in the 5 videos that you get on the flash drive, what Dave teaches you and shows you on his YouTube channel, you're going to have to be convinced that all of this is, all of this information you'll be learning it's good foundational, brain food type stuff. But if you want to hit the target right on the money, I'm telling you, folks, this is where you got to go. For the sake of discussion, We the People, great organization. Okay, I support them. I mean, I've given them money. I've cheered them on. I've been behind them. I didn't sign their complaint because I didn't like the way it was written. Okay, but I supported the ones that went to it because it's better to do something incorrect than not to do something at all. I mean, look how many people that We the People have woken up to, okay, have woken up. But with all the information that we the people gave and have and what they've done. And a lot of it is attributed to Larry Beecraft, an attorney, a guy named Jeffrey Dickinson or Dixon or something like that, who is an attorney. John Rowland, I'm not sure who he is. I believe he might be an attorney. But, you know, Bob Schultz and all that. With all the information...
Chris,
yes?
That was Dick Stein.
Dick Stein, yes. With all the information that they have given, with all the information that they stand on and want the government to admit or deny to, why are people going to jail? Why does, you know, Larry Beecraft did, and I'm not bashing Larry Beecraft, okay? I'm asking questions. If this information is so good, why did Sherry Jackson go to jail? Why did the guy Dave Miner go to jail? Why did the guy that died in prison in Texas,
Dick Simkinen?
Thank you. I got a problem with his name. Why did he go to jail? If this information is so good, I know why they go to jail. I know it now. And then in 2006, I get a knock on my door. Well, first of all, I talked to Dave. I get on board with this. I said, "Oh, why didn't I join this joiner? It would have had, you know, I mean, build my little ego up a little bit. It would have had Chris Chapman right on the cover of it. Oh man!" But I didn't. Okay, but I did become a joiner, and I believe I became one of the first joiners. And I sent that to the IRS. I sent it to all the federal judges in my district because I wanted everybody to know the truth. Okay, I sent it to the sheriff, to the clerk of the court, you know, to show that their liens and, you know, that the notice of federal tax liens is a crime, that it's on the record and everything. Did I care if they paid attention to it? Not at the time. Because, you know, we get busy, we get our phone calls, we got our families, we got our, you know, things to do, and, you know, we are only one, and they are many, you know. I mean, you know, the commissioner's not writing all these letters. He's got 16, 20, 30,000 people that are trying to steal your money, okay? So, you know, you can't divide yourself like they can divide, all right? So you have to stay on point. It's up to you people to have a small target. They got a big target, but you have a small target, and you got one opportunity to hit that bullseye. So, and I realized that when I talked to David, because, you know, just for the sake of discussion, if you go down that long list and you see where we the people bring up about the citizen of the United States and CFR .1-1 and so forth, they want you to admit, they want the government to admit a whole lot of things about it. But Dave breaks it up in one or two, three questions, okay? I mean, he just annihilates that. You don't need to, I mean, it's good to know it, but you don't need it, okay? It's only good to understand. If anything, it's good to know it to help you understand where David's coming from, because David can prove what they haven't, I don't want to say what they haven't been able to prove, but Dave has a uniqueness of looking at things in a different way, and that's what it takes, okay? It takes somebody to look at something and say, well, look at this, you know? And then when you surround yourself with that thought, it becomes so real that you can't use anything else. And you know what that one question is about citizenship? Now, many people will say, oh, I'm not the citizen of the United States. You know, I'm a sovereign and all this and yada, yada, yada. Well, great. That's fine. You know, you're going to get 5 years. I'm not the citizen of the United States as defined in Title 26. I'm not named by statute. Only Congress, not the Secretary, not his mother, nor the agent or the agent's mother or the commissioner can title me as citizen of the United States when the secretary only has it in regulations. Now, the secretary wrote the citizen of the United States in regulations, but is not the same citizen as in the statutes, because if you go to the statutes, for instance, in 1402B or 3121E, you'll see where Congress defined the citizen of the United States there, not me. Okay? So just that simple. I mean, it's just that simple. And you don't go in there, I'm not the all caps name and I'm not the citizen of the United States and all that. You don't need to get into all that because they're just listening to you as a useful idiot, as a protege of somebody going to prison. Look, we just sent him to prison, now you're next. And the judge tried that to intimidate me after a grand jury hearing because I was taking the stand. Hey, I got questions and I'm going to go through with that in just a minute, but I got questions that I asked the grand jury and they haven't answered. And I sent a criminal complaint to Congress, which you seem to ignore, but become complicit to their criminal activity. It was like I threw ice water on her. So let's backtrack. So now, at the end of 2006, when does the IRS really like to mess with you? Around the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all that. They just want to ruin your life because they're evil. They're evil people. And so I get a knock on the door, and it was dark, and I opened the door, and it was David Solar, my favorite special agent. And I said, well, I'll be darned, what are you doing here so late? And he said, well, you got a subpoena to come to the grand jury. I turned on the porch light, and I looked at it, and I was amazed. And I guess it came out, and my excitement came out, and I said, you mean I get to go in front of a grand jury? And he looked at me like, what is this guy insane? I said, really, I get to go in front of the grand jury? Oh, this is great. And I shook his hand. And he had another guy with him, a new guy, because they always come in pairs because he's a witness. And I shook his hand. I said, what's your name? And he told me his name. I said, can I have your card? Because I added him to the criminal complaint, I need names. So because he's a witness, he's going to be an adverse witness, still the same, he's a witness. So then I get a letter a couple of days later from the attorney saying, hey, we understand that you want to testify before the grand jury. You're going to waive your rights, and don't know if you want to do that. You may want to just go to Agent Solar's office and do the exemplars. And for those people who do not know what exemplars are, they're examples. That's Latin for examples. They want examples of my speech, my fingerprinting, my handwriting, and so forth. So then I get another subpoena, amended subpoena, that they want to do my voice. And I said, great. I said, I'll be there. So then in 2000, I forget exactly when I stood in front of the grand jury. I'm sure it was in January. Yeah, it was. It was January 24th. I had a briefcase full, and the DOJ sat me down in an office, and he's prepping me and finding out what I'm going to talk about, and I wouldn't answer him. He said, so what what's the main things you're going to bring up? And I said, well, I'm not exactly sure yet. I'll let you know when I get in there. I said, I'm a little nervous and everything, and I really wasn't. I mean, I couldn't wait to get in there. And he's looking at my briefcase, and he says, he's looking at it, and he said, you got a lot of information there? I said, well, just back up information for me and so forth. And he acted like hey, this is the guy you want to be, for your child's grandfather. I mean, he was lovey-dovey. And he was telling me what a great system we had that you get to go in front of a grand jury. And I said, yeah, where they can indict a ham sandwich. And he laughed about that. He said, yeah, I know. People say that, but here you are. You're here to give your side. And I said, yes, sir. And I said, I really do appreciate that. He said, now, after you're done, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go in there, you're going to testify, and then, they may ask you questions, or I may ask you a couple questions and so forth. And then after that, you're going to agree to do the exemplars? And I said, of course. I said, yeah, that's what I'm here for. He said, great. So he goes in, and they go ahead, and for those who want to know what a grand jury is like, it's just, you're in a room, just four walls, and it's, bright, and there's people sitting in these uncomfortable chairs, and there's generally somewhere around 18 to 25 people or so, and I don't know how many was there, but I brought more than enough handouts for them, and it's very casual. So I get on the chair, and they asked me to hold my hand, to take an oath, and I did. And then they said, okay, go ahead. And I said, okay, well, I said, how many here are citizens of the United States? And they all raised their hands. And I said, okay, now, for all those who are residents of Puerto Rico, keep your hands up. And they all put their hands down. And so I did this a couple times, and my verbiage is in quotations. I'm giving you a scenario of what happened after all these years. This was 7 years ago, by the way. So after a little bit of dialogue back and forth, I gave them a handout, and I said, this is the problem I'm having. I've been asking the IRS questions mainly on their delegation of authority, and they refuse to ask it. Now, in David Maryland's criminal complaint to Congress, he talks about, he has many different issues, and A, B, C, D, and E, and so forth. And one of the issues is Title IV, Section 72. The other issue is I'm not named in the statutes, and the other issue is Section 83, which to me are the most three powerful positions to take. And I'm going to admit that Section 83 was not on the top of my list. But Title IV, Section 72 was, because I understood it right away. I grasped it right away. It wasn't difficult for me to understand. And so I really hammered on that. We went into lightly, I'm not named in the statute, which I was telling them I'm confused about. I said, how can I be two citizens when the regulation only names one, a citizen of the United States, but it's not the same definition as the citizen in statutes. I said, so I'm a little confused, okay, and I am an American, a Floridian, and I don't see where I'm named. And then in Section 83, I briefly went through that. Well, at the end, now this was over an hour and a half. At the end, during the course of the conversation with the grand jury, the DOJ is sitting over by the corner, and he's got his at a desk, and he's got his resting his forehead in his hand, and and I'm visualizing, thinking, oh my God, this guy's going to destroy me. So at the end, I said, now, is there any questions? And the grand jury was sitting there looking like, like their eyes had rainbows in them. They just, they're glassed over and so forth. And one guy, I remember this guy so vividly, one guy raised his hand. He was an older gentleman. And he said, what would you have us ask your adversary? And, I just gave him a list of questions, and he's asking me this. So either I'm thinking, God, I did a poor job, or these guys are asleep, or they're on drugs, or whatever. But I sat down, and I closed my eyes for a minute, and it's like God gave me the answer. I said, what if I make out another list of questions that they would just have to admit or deny? Would that suffice? And immediately, the DOJ got up. He shot up so fast you could see the blood drain from his face. He said, you send those questions to me or Agent Solar. And I said, well, what assurance would the grand jury get them? He said, I will give it to them if it's applicable. Now, wait a minute. I didn't say anything. I just looked at the grand jury. I had my hands up with my palms facing up on my side, like Alfred E. Newman, if anybody's old enough to remember him, and looked at the grand jury and turned my head to look at the DOJ, like, really? Did you just say that? And so with that, he sent me to he asked me, he says, isn't it true, Mr. Chapman, that you gave up your Social Security number? And I said, yes, it is. Okay, done deal. Great. Any other questions? Nope, that's it. Go in the office and wait for me. Oh, no. Then he says, okay, he says this in front of the grand jury. He says, okay, now you agreed that if we let you testify before the grand jury, you would do the exemplars. I said, yes, but there's a question on the table for you to answer first. And he literally not picked me up and threw me out of the office, but you can visualize it that he wanted to. He wanted to throw me out of the office into this little room, and then he follows me into this little room, and he tells me, he said, I got 2 officers here that can throw you right now into jail. And I said, okay. And I just looked at him like, what do you want me to do about that, And he said, you're going to do the exemplars? And I said, do you have your delegation of authority? And he said, go home. I said, okay. So I went home. So then 2 weeks later, he has me come back to do the exemplars. And now there's 3 agents sitting in this room with 2 agents with him. I call them all agents. They're all, government agents. They're sitting in a room like a funeral just happened. And I said, well, good morning, gentlemen. How are you? He said, you ready to do the exemplars? I said, of course I am. You got your delegation of authority? Go home. I said, look, guys, it's a 35-mile trip here, 70 miles round trip. And I said, I want to do the exemplars. I said, just show me your delegation of authority. Go home. So then he lies and writes a thing to the court, which I never got a copy of it, but I get a subpoena from the court to show cause why I should not be held in contempt. When I went to court, the judge asked, and now this is in camera, and so they didn't want me to bring my crowd because I got people, in Central Florida would have loved to come to watch this. So they made it in camera. Only my wife and my sister-in-law came. And so when they found out that nobody came, they said, okay, we can have an open court here. Ain't this system lovely? We got a great government. Okay, so anyhow, we started the proceeding. The DOJ got up and testified that I refused to do the exemplars and so forth. And judge asked what I had to say, and I said I never refused anything. I just gave them, I said I'd be glad to do it upon them showing me that delegation of authority. He said, did you bring any witnesses? And I said, what a trick question that is. I said, can I request Agent Solar to the stand? He said, yes. So I said, oh, great. So I got Agent Solar on the stand. I said, Agent Solar, I said, when you and I first met, what was my first question? Now remember, I taped it, I recorded it, I had it transcribed, he got the transcription, and I have a copy of it right in my hand. And I said, and I even had the page open because if he was going to rebut anything or say something different. I was going to read the transcript. And he says, you asked, your first question was, you asked if I had delegation of authority. And I said, what was your answer? And he said, no, I didn't have one on me. He said, I'd have to go back to the office and get it. And I said, did you go back to the office to get it? And he goes, yes. And I said, and did you bring it back? Did you present it? And he goes, no. And he said, why? He said, well, because I don't have it. End of story. Okay. He doesn't have delegation of authority right there. I have him I have a testimony that the agent admitted that he doesn't have delegation of authority. And the reason he doesn't have it, he says, because he doesn't need it. I said, what do you mean? How do you come calling and talking to me? He said, oh, by a telephone call or inter-office memos. That's his delegation of authority, folks. Okay, I just destroyed him right there. But then we went on and we answered some other questions and so forth, and going back and forth, and he could never answer the questions. I asked him I wish I knew what I knew about 83 then as what I know now, because I really would have destroyed him. But I said, being that this is, the Constitution only has two taxes, direct tax and indirect tax, may I ask what tax you're after? And he stated, now here's a revenue officer for the IRS. He stated point blank, I don't know what a direct tax is. And I was going back to the table and I almost tripped over myself thinking, wait a minute, I mean, that wasn't an answer that I expected. And I said, you don't know what a direct tax is? I said, in your training, and the judge, not the lawyer, but the judge objected and told me to move on. He doesn't know what a direct tax is. I said, okay. Well, being that it's not a direct tax, and it's not an excise tax, and I'm going to presume that it's not an excise tax because he's not going to be able to give me that, answer that either. Then what tax, may I inquire, the income is derived from? And his answer was personal income tax, which I never heard that one before. That was new on me. I said, personal income tax, would you mind pointing to the code where I can research that? And the judge overruled and told me to move on and ask if I had any more questions. Then after that, the judge was going to force me to go ahead and do the exemplars. And she said, many people, and she named two people that she knew that I knew. Now, I don't know if this shows that she's biased or unbiased, but she knew that I knew these two people. And she said, many people, many families have been broken up, such as, and she named the two people, and you need to get a lawyer. I can't, I can't recommend, something, but you need to get a lawyer because you're going to just get yourself more in trouble. And I said, Judge, on two different occasions, I sent you a copy of the criminal complaint that I sent to Congress. And you seem to ignore that, but become complicit to these people's criminal activity. I just put her in a position of Title 18, Section 3, and where she became complicit after the crime, after knowing now she knows the crimes are being committed, now she's becoming a part of it. So with that, she told me I will do the exemplars, and I will be there on February 14th at 9 a.m., and to do it, and unless you want to appear back before this court again. And I said, under threat, duress, and fear of going to jail, what else would you have me to do? And she didn't like that either, because she's ordering me without authority. See, but I'm not going to fight all this. I'm just going to, okay, you're threatening me. You're going to put me in jail. You're going to destroy my family, my income, and everything else if I don't do what you're telling me to do when these people are creating extortion and other crimes, and you're ignoring that. That's what you're telling me, Judge. I mean, that's basically what I'm saying, see? So then I came back the next day, and I gave her, I left some documents on her desk because in her order she says that, I'm a resident of Cocoa, and I'm not. I'm domiciled in Cocoa, but we're not going to get into all that. But when I did the exemplars, I signed every document under threat, duress, and fear of going to jail. The first document that I signed with that, the agent immediately stopped me. And he said, "Do you want to go back in front of the judge?" And I said, "Absolutely, can we?" And he says, and so he goes outside and he talks to the DOJ. In the meantime, the DOJ is not acting like I want him to be the grandfather of my grandkids anymore, okay? This man is evil. This guy is Dracula. This guy is Frankenstein now, okay? This guy is totally on the other side. So then then the agent came back and said, "Okay, you can sign it that way." And I said, "Of course I can." So then I read a dialogue. They wanted, my voice inflection because they're probably on this call listening now and everything. And so they listened to a dialogue. I read a dialogue, and I said, "Okay, under threat and duress and fear of going to jail, I'm reading the story." And then after every paragraph or in between paragraphs, I said, "As I continue under threat, duress, and fear of going to jail," I go ahead and keep reading. And then they took my picture, and then when they went to send me home, they blocked the door. They actually blocked the door from me leaving. And the DOJ's on one side of me and the agent's on the other side of me. And the DOJ is now trying to act like, a nice guy. And he says, "Chris," he says, "I know you relied on Long versus Tennessee. And, those Tennesseans, they just don't like the federal government, And I said, "And what makes you think it's any different here in Orlando?" And he said, you heard that judge. You know that judge doesn't like the position you're taking. And when you come back to court, and if you're going to keep on the path you're going, she's going to bury you under jail. But that's just the jail. Then when you come out, we're going to, civilly, we're going to own everything you have, and so forth. And see, what he doesn't know, I don't own anything. I haven't owned anything for 30 years. But anyhow, he said, civilly, we're gonna rape you. Basically, is what he's saying. And he moved enough where I could go to the door, and I said, "My God is bigger than your God." And I opened the door and walked out, and I went down the hall, never to hear from them again. And this is what I learned, and I'm very thankful for Dave Maryland, because if it wasn't for his criminal complaint, if it wasn't for his memorandum, his 58-page memorandum of law that I relied on, that I had the evidence of, that I gave to the grand jury. I gave the grand jury the criminal complaint. I gave the grand jury the joinder. And I gave them all the evidence that they needed to make an informed decision. Am I willful failure to file? Okay, is there a duty? Did I know about that duty? Did I believe I had the duty? Okay, those are the first two requirements. A willful, defending the willful failure to file. Well, I knocked them right out of the box. There is no legal duty, and so of course I believe I don't have a legal duty, because there is no legal duty. Okay, so done deal, case closed, end of story. And I gotta owe it to I gotta owe it to God for me, bringing Dave into my life. But because if I would have used and challenged any of this stuff that you see on this list, admit or deny this, admit or deny that, and there's a presence for that. There's always a presence for this information. But I wanted to stay focused on the grand jury, because they were investigating me for willful failure to file. So I got to show them there is no law requiring me to file. Not that what I believe, but here is the statutes. Here is the law. And so you, with this information given to you, tell me how I violated the law when I am applying the law as it is written, not as it is misinterpreted. So with that, I'd like to thank Dave publicly for doing what he does and staying on track the way he has. And you'll hear him say many, many times, I'm not part of the patriot movement. I don't follow this. I don't follow that. And it's true, and I'm glad he doesn't. So, Dave, I'd like to thank you.
Anytime, Chris. And let me take this opportunity to compliment you on your bad attitude.
Yeah, and so anyhow, Dave and I have been talking. We got some things that are coming up, and if Dave wants to bring it up a little bit now, that's fine. But I think that people need to join the joinder. I think we need to get as many people around the country, because when a registrar, meaning the clerk of the court or the clerk of records, takes a notice of a federal tax lien, question number one, is it lawful? Is it legal? Is it the right thing to do? And if they do the wrong, there's no right way to do a wrong thing. Okay, I mean, that's just, that should be a maximum of law. There is no right way to do a wrong thing. So when the clerk of the court takes a notice of a federal tax lien, she's committing a crime, or she or he is committing, I'm going to say he, but he's committing a crime because it's an invalid notice of federal tax lien. So we start educating our electors or our servants and work up, then we can annihilate the federal government IRS stuff. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And we need to start forming groups and start educating people to start educating the groups and start taking a proactive action against the crimes that are being committed against our fellow Americans.
And education does not take the shape of, show me the law. Education does not take the shape of non-resident alien. The other day, I came across a 2000 indictment of ATC. Mr. Terry Anderson, I think, is one of the defendants. He had an organization that was telling people to manage their affairs with the federal government as if they were non-resident aliens. And today, 13, 14 years later, we have WeissParis.com, WEISS, Paris.com, saying, you're a non-resident alien, do this, enlist our services, $5,000. That's not a movement. That's utter stagnation, and they're still asking questions. Admit or deny this. I don't have to do that. I simply tell them, you deprived me of Section 83 by taxing my pay. The fact you mentioned income tax to me when you know all I've done is sell my labor for its value, you're engaged in a conspiracy against my rights with your boss. And that's 10 years in federal prison under 18 U.S.C. 241. So by speaking to me, you've committed a felony. And that's if the tax code applied to Americans. What you did was you wrote a regulation to implicate Americans because you got a tax code that doesn't apply to them. And so you wrote a regulation under Section 1 of the tax code, 26 CFR 1.1-1, to make Americans liable. And so where are we here? We're in the middle of a conspiracy against my rights. You're a felon by even speaking to me. You don't hear me say, show me the law. You hear me cite two laws, Section 83 and 26 CFR 1.1-1. Game over. It's come down to that. This is such a fast track to understanding the basis of the tax code and the nature of what they call an income tax in the United States. Social Security has always been theft. And I'm not talking about Chapter 1 of the tax code. Social Security is imposed by Chapters 2 and 21. When you look at only those two chapters and explore their legislative history, you find that they've never applied to the 50 states or to Americans, period. And now we're left with just Chapter 1, where nobody is named as a subject, as opposed to chapters 2 and 21, where they do have a subject, the citizen of the possessions, right, in statute. Those aren't me. Those are citizens of the possessions. Stay away from me with Social Security. Now that we're left with just chapter 1, we have no definition of citizen in chapter 1. But we do in regulations under Chapter 1. 26 CFR 1.1-1, in violation of the 16th Amendment, says Congress can lay and collect this tax. It has to be a statute. In August 2005, they needed a protective order against this argument, and they got a protective order against the argument. The judge issued a protective order against Jim Walden asking the questions about this briefed argument. You will not drag the DOJ into this argument. They're just attorneys. And here's this pro se litigant with a briefing of this issue from me. I wrote the lawsuit, I wrote the brief, and they needed a protective order. If you want to see that protective order, you can join the congressional criminal complaint that I filed in January of 2006. It was exhibit number 1. Go to the YouTube channel. If you went to takefromcaesar.us, takefromcaesar.us, upper left, click on YouTube. It'll take you right to my YouTube channel, and the video called Key to the Code, watch it. It's an hour, 49 minutes, and at the very end of the video, there's the protective order with the docket number and everything in a court stamp. They needed a protective order against this argument. That's not show me the law. That's not deny or admit. That's, excuse me, I'm only named in a regulation. Your Honor, we need protection. So I'm not playing a game, number 1. If it were a game, I'm not playing the same game anyone else is playing. And none of this is legal advice. Anything that sounds like that to you, just consider it something somebody else might do on a planet far, far away where the law matters. It doesn't matter here, as proven by the fact they wanted a protective order and they got one against the law. Protect me against the law, Your Honor. Yes, I will. I'll do that for you. I'll protect you against the law so you can get these people's money, so you can go out there and steal from 317 million gun owners. That's the game they're playing. I think they're playing with fire, but it's only fire if Americans wake up and stop drinking the snake oil or whatever you do with snake oil. Rub it into your belly. I don't even know what you do with snake oil. But that's what everybody's into. And when you want to graduate from that, when you want to really get down to business with your public servants, it's about the law. Go to the YouTube channel, watch the videos. If somebody wants to paste into the link, the chat window here on YouTube, or on TalkShoe, the YouTube address, that's fine. Or go from the homepage of takefromcaesar.us and watch the videos on YouTube, and you're lagging behind other people who have joined this complaint and shut down the investigation the IRS was doing, or terminated the grand jury proceedings that were being held against them. So you're not the first. Don't be the last. Join this complaint by contacting Chris's office. He'll put the email into the window there on TalkShoe, americanliberties.llc@gmail.com, and ask us about how to join the complaint. It's an affidavit from you to Congress that says, I've been deprived of Section 83, and I think it's criminal what the IRS is doing, and I hereby declare myself to be a co-complainant. And that makes my complaint your complaint. And my complaint is what Chris gave to the grand jury. My approach is what Chris used about the fact a grand jury was convened to indict him, and he walked right in there, kept a great attitude, did everything the court said to do, and confronted them. And he's here today without having taken a mandatory break from life, wearing a jumpsuit for the government. He went on with life, and they did not interrupt him by throwing him in the hoosegow. It's got to be a first, or one of the first times that's ever happened in a tax case. And so it's not like I'm singing you a sweet song about Patriots past. You're talking right to one when you listen to Chris. He did it. So you can't predict corruption, and so I'm not going to stand here and and sing you a song of success. They'll reach out and they'll squeeze you anytime they want. And the only way you can defeat them is when they know it's going to have to go to a jury, either a grand jury or a trial jury, because those are normal people that aren't greasy deviates like our public servants. They honestly believe it's their duty to rob you blind. They know about Section 83 and that it governs how to tax their own pay, and they still scheme to run around it. I need a protective order. They know that they aren't even named as subject of an income tax, and they do it anyway. So you have to outgrow or graduate from the movement because they're still just asking questions. If We the People has a list of deny or admit, well, that's a guy that has access to experts, quote unquote. I have my own definition of expert that's elevated, but he's got former IRS agents, Sherry Jackson, a decorated forensic account and fraud investigator, and Joe Bannister, Jeffrey Dickstein, I think another attorney was Ortiz or Orit, I can't remember. There's this list of people that were writing professional opinions in the 90s, and so We the People has access to a bunch of people that really should know, but they're on the top of the heap as far as resumes. They don't know yet, and so I'm not going to stand here and decorate them, but he has access to those people, and the best he can come up with is a list of deny or admit. I'm the only one stating affirmatively what they've done with the law and the crimes to which it amounts. And if you want to graduate from everybody else's curriculums, and this is why they don't like me, because as soon as you say, Section 83, you deprive me of it, it destroys their curriculums. Their curriculums are all based on a presumption that enforcement is legitimate. I didn't make that presumption. I looked at the law first and deciphered the law, and then I compared it to their enforcement, saying, you violated this law, this law, this law, this law that says you can't do it that way. So I went at the question with an entirely different approach. I studied long enough to learn what they should be doing, and along the way I was learning what they do from people that came to my desk and said I had a certain IRS problem, and I'd look at everything the IRS was doing, and then I'd look up the authority to do all that in the tax code and log the differences between what I saw in the law and what I saw the IRS doing to people, and came up with a few ground level challenges. These are the big ones. I can tell you pennies that they're stealing. I can tell you little procedures they do that don't affect many people at all, but they aren't allowed to do it. And the big ones, though, are, of course, the ones I'm going to concentrate on. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this to help as many people as possible. And I help most people. I help the most people when I argue the things that apply to most people. And that's why you hear me focusing on just a couple of arguments. They have to comply with Section 83. They can't talk about it. Only the excess over the amount paid is gross income. Watch the videos on the YouTube channel. The Americans are not named in the definition of citizen in Chapters 2 and 21. Social Security is theft. Now that we're left with just Chapter 1, we find there is no statutory definition of citizen. There's a definition in regulation, in violation of the 16th Amendment that says Congress can collect this tax. It has to be a statute. Go to Google, okay? Type in 26 USC 1. That's Section 1 of the tax code. And the first hit on the list is always going to be law at Cornell University. That's the one I use. You click right on Cornell and you go look at 26 USC 1. And you find me where in that statute it mentions anybody's citizenship. It doesn't. And they wrote a regulation that says, who owes this tax? Citizens of the United States. Who are they? Any person born and naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. Even if they live somewhere else, this citizen owes it no matter where they reside. None of that is in statute. You can't do that. Watch the video. Watch what I've posted on YouTube. And it gets right down to this. And at the end of the Key to the Code video is that protective order, right from court, right from a U.S. judge. And his issuance of that protective order got him named in criminal count in the complaint that I served on Congress New Year's of '06, because that's a crime. It obviously is a conspiracy against the rights of the plaintiff that sued the government to deprive him of his access to the law, a conspiracy by the judge and the attorney, Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Bass. And so I named them as defendants in my criminal complaint. I'm not going to stand for that. You're an American, right? Are you going to stand for that? This is the type of effort that you join when you file a joinder, an affidavit of joinder, to become a co-complainant. Contact our office about joining the complaint. If you take exception to this, if you look at Section 83 with the understanding that it applies to all compensation, watch the video called Internal Revenue Ruling 2007-19. And if you think you're being deprived of Section 83 of the tax code, why wouldn't you complain to Congress to call it a crime? Why reinvent the wheel? Why write another memorandum? Why write another criminal complaint? If you join my complaint, you're saying the same thing, and all the paperwork is already done for you. So join the complaint. Start your education by buying the flash drive with the videos from 2003, where I teach all this at a whiteboard. I can't teach it that well again. It's a spectacle how quickly and fluently and solidly information comes out of my mouth on those videos. I can't believe it myself. Buy the videos on the flash drive at takefromcaesar.us. I think that's the best start. If you want an entire manual about Section 83 on the website, buy the code breaker, the Section 83 equation, and you're on your way. Then join the complaint. Keep watching Take from Caesar for new materials, and get your joinder filed with Congress to become a co-complainant. Make my complaint your complaint. By doing that, Chris was able to walk right in and out of the grand jury and look the DOJ right in the face and have all the confidence in the world. Well, Chris?
Well, I'd like to say that people also, if you are having a problem, you need to, like I said, you need to get together and start forming groups and start educating. Dave made a point. I never thought about it. If you're talking to a commissioner, county commissioner or city commissioner or anybody, any other human being, he thinks that he has to pay the IRS. Now, I'm not promoting you don't pay taxes. I'm not promoting you don't pay the income tax. What I am promoting is get educated about the law and make your own decision. And these commissioners think that they have to pay. Well, when you start educating them, you could turn your whole commissioners around and say, "Hey, man, we better wake up." So it's good. Now, if anybody has any questions on the phone, hit *8. If you want to make, I think there's a Steve that wanted it may be on the phone that was going to say something. Hit *8 so I can see you. And if you have any questions or comments, please state it here on the board. And I can see somebody said, guest 7 said, my favorite quote, when a man who is honestly mistaken hears the truth, he will either cease to be mistaken or cease to be honest. And that is so true.
Another comment, guest 11. When I heard Chris give this story a few years ago, I joined David's complaint. And another comment, guest 11, Dave was the first one who did not say, "Show me the law." He said, "Here is the law." When I read the 58-page memorandum, I see it was my answer.
There you go. So, we're not trying to and for, I've had people say, well, I'm not having any problems with the IRS, but man, this information is good, and I don't know if I want to take the chance because I'm afraid. And I understand that. I'm not, belittling you that there's some people who got more substance to be an American than others. But you can do an affidavit, which is your public duty. I mean, it is your civic duty.
Right, and it's filed with Congress. You're not performing a confrontational act with the IRS when all you do is send it to Congress. And by sending it to Congress and holding it, instead of going good guns with it all over and serve everybody and their brother with it in the IRS, put it in your file so at least you have it.
That's right. Now, many people, there's several people who came on late, and for those who came on late, I started off with about the first hour talking about what I went through with the grand jury and how I presented myself with the grand jury. So it's good listening, I believe, and you might want to go back and listen to it. And if you heard it several times, do it several times, because it's like everything else. I read a book or watch a movie, or read law, and I'll get something out of it every time, like I do with David's book, The Codebreaker, Section 83 Equation. I mean, I just get warm and fuzzy feelings every time I read it, because it's right on point. And there's people that, it's funny how people think. I'll bring up Section 83, and the guy will say, "Oh man, the courts have fought against that for years. That's a frivolous argument." I said, "What's frivolous? Oh, your wages is not income." I didn't say that. Where did I say that? And they'll look, and they can't repeat what I said. And I said, "See, you're making a presumption, aren't you? You got it self-planted in your mind that what I'm going to say, and you don't hear what I say, you only hear what you think I'm going to say, and you respond to what you think I'm going to say instead of what I said." Now, is that stupidity or what?
Just the other day, Chris and I were privy to an email where a guy said, "Well, the courts have rejected the argument. You're up against a whole world of opposing precedent, and so you need some special magic." And Chris and I talked about this. I said, aren't we, in fact, creaming precedent already? When a guy here in Seattle who is an advocate, he helped somebody get $6,000 in Social Security benefits back from the IRS. In the last 120 days, 150 days, 2 grand jury proceedings have been terminated because the people in the grand jury proceedings, the subjects, the proposed defendants, filed affidavits of joinder to my complaint and served the complaint on the DOJ and the grand jury. And this person's going, "Oh, you can't, and everything's impossible, and the planets are aligned against you," and all this other good garbage, when, excuse me, the courts are half of the problem. As soon as you get a judge involved in this, their authority becomes an obstacle. And so you don't see Chris and I going to court over this. The judges are half of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it was the easiest thing to do, is to corrupt the judiciary, because they're the smallest of all 3 branches.
And Don, do you think David is exaggerating when he says how you help somebody?
Nope, not at all. And that party that we helped is still ecstatic, so it's great. Dave is right on. Get in the joiner and do what Dave says. Listen and learn and rejoice. Okay.
And Don, how long have you known me?
Oh, I can't say too long, but it's been a long time. What, 15 years, 18 years, something like that.
Okay.
See, and Don, because of what you've done, I did a nunk-pro-tunk on my Social Security about 15 years ago, and I haven't used my Social Security number at all. But with that being said, I put money into that over many years, as well as my employer when I used to work for somebody. So they have money that they got from me when it was deception. So now, because of what you did, I'm thinking, and I really got to pray about this, but I'm thinking of going down to the Social Security office and asking for my money.
Sure, of course.
And,
you put it in there.
and I don't see why not, because here is a guy that I'm assuming when you got his money back, the government was claiming he owed him taxes, but whatever you did showed that they were acting in a criminal venue, and they didn't want to be a part of that, so they would just rather give the guys money and go on and go after somebody else who's not so educated. Am I correct?
That's for sure. When they go fishing, they're looking for salmon, not sharks. And we'll bite their head off, not just eat their line, but we can do damage to them, I think. And I feel that they don't want to mess with us. They're going to cut bait and go elsewhere. And so that's a good thing, brother.
Yep. Okay. Well, I may be need. I may. Like I've always said, you and I are going to be working together because I think I'm going to go down and get my money because it is my money. Period. Okay.
Amen.
So I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, Don, before I mute you back up?
Oh, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other questions, statements, or comments that anybody would like to make? Okay, here, South Carolina.
My husband and I have a problem with the IRS saying that we owe him money, and he's already paying back the federal, and now the state is coming after us. And so I was just wondering if this would help us in the situation we're in if we joined a criminal complaint.
You know, by listening to you, I would guess that the state is not Massachusetts.
No, it's South Carolina.
That's what I thought. Okay. The state is just as guilty as the federal government. And now, Chris was LT in South Carolina.
Yes.
I'm going to give you the South Carolina statutes that here it is, South Carolina income taxation.
Dave, LT recommended her.
Oh, okay. So you already know which statutes I put in his joinder, don't you? And
no,
we're looking at 12-6-40. For the purposes of this title, Internal Revenue Code is deemed to contain all changes necessary to blah, blah, blah. Subsection B. Adjusted gross income for South Carolina tax purposes means the taxpayer's adjusted gross income for federal income tax purposes. So federal income tax standards and statutes apply for the calculation of South Carolina income tax. And so in South Carolina, I would tell them to their faces, you're depriving me of tax code section 83 if you can figure out a way the tax code even applies to me in the first place when I'm only named in regulation. Checkmate. You can't predict corruption. You can't impress these people with the law. They don't care. They have all the authority. They've had it for too long. And so it's a terrible situation that we're all in, and that's why I concentrate mostly on criminal cases instead of civil, because there's just nothing you can impress them with, and what you need is an administrative approach. And if Chris can help you, that's one thing, but I just don't do liens and levies. Mm-hmm. And who knows, it might help you to join my complaint, but I can't be sure.
I tell you what, ma'am, why don't you give me a call either after this call. Do you have my phone number?
No.
Okay, email me at americanliberties.llc@gmail.com.
Oh, and American Liberties.
Yeah, that's plural. americanliberties.llc@gmail.com. Okay. And I'll email me your phone number and I'll give you a call. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Now, everybody that's here, you can go back on the archive here on Chris's call page, and we discussed this, and every call is about these topics that are paramount to everybody. This is 99.9% of America we're talking about, and so we don't talk about much else. And the materials on takefromcaesar.us are dynamite. The videos on my YouTube channel are a great place to start. Get the materials on takefromcaesar.us. And again, this is not legal advice, and you can't predict corruption, so I certainly can't promise anything. However, every public servant that talks to you about income taxes or anything else, they're being deprived of Section 83 also. And if you look an IRS agent right in the eye and say, how does Section 83 of the tax code operate last year when you filed your taxes? No? Well, then shut up. Where am I wrong here? They can't get into Section 83. Watch the videos on my YouTube channel. There's one about Revenue Ruling 2007-19, and it gets into it as far as the government gets into it, which isn't very far, to show you they can't talk about this statute, and yet it explains how to tax all compensation. All the case law says so. The Revenue Ruling admits it, and yet they don't even train their people on it. So that having been said, this has been a very long call, Chris. You want to wrap this up? Are there any more questions?
Well, yeah. Let me see. Is there okay? Is there any more questions now? Steve, are you on the call? Was Steve going to say something, Dave? I forget.
If he's here, I certainly welcome a comment from him.
Yeah, Steve, if you're on the call, hit *8. If you're on the board, type something in the chat. Okay, here we got Central Arkansas. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just enjoying your show today, learning a lot, and I just wanted to call and thank Dave for his help and my little problem down here in Arkansas.
Always a pleasure, of course.
Thank you, Steve.
I really appreciate
There's no bigger reward than having somebody say, we got the problem solved, or I'm not going to prison, or anything else where you can get the government to back off. I've got some very strange victories in my history, but to keep somebody out of prison is, of course, the biggest one, and it's very rewarding to hear the kind words of the people who have joined my complaint, and people that have used my stuff right in the middle of controversies that seem to confound almost everybody else. There's a couple of people doing good work out there that claim to be able to challenge any IRS assessment, and it's always important to be able to do that, but there's plenty of others that are simply on the wrong track. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'd like to make a quick announcement that we're coming out with a new, not a revised or amended process that will help people, and so we're working on that. But also, in the meantime, as everybody knows, own nothing but yet control everything. We're involved in asset protection. We help you, and that's rule number one. You want to protect your assets. But we also, I'm an affiliate, and for $3.50 a month per computer, you can prevent hackers, whether they be the government or corporations or just cyber theft, from using your keyboard, whether it be on your telephone or computer. And as of August 26th, we're now going to be able to this has been long awaited, handle Mac computers as well. So, people steal your identity, your Social Security, your bank account number, your information, and they go ahead and start charging things to your credit card. It's happening all over the world, and it's the number one crime now that is even larger than the drug cartel. So if you want your information protected for as little as $3.50 a month, get back to me as well. I'll show you how to do it. Or you can go to my website at cyberwealth7.com/Chappy, CHAPPY. So with that being said, if there's no more questions, statements, or comments, thank you, Dave, for coming on the call. And thank you for all coming on the call and listening to this. God bless America. And this call is officially over.